Costco's Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Nearly a month after losing the election, President Trump still won't admit he's lost. And the conspiracy theory that he's spinning to explain Joe Biden's win is a doozy even for him. Planet Trump wants you to believe, without a shred of evidence to back it up, that the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, Venezuela, poll workers in multiple states, but only the ones that Trump lost, Fox anchors, but only the dayside ones, Republicans, but only Republicans in the states Trump lost, and of course Democrats, were all in on a conspiracy that forced him to lose the election. The strangest of strange bedfellows, the motliest of motley crews, somehow, Trump claims, all came together to throw the election. That's what Trump wants you to believe happened. He also wants you to believe that they covered their tracks impeccably, because remember, there is no evidence they coordinated or communicated, and there is zero evidence of widespread voter fraud. Zero. We know this because election officials across the country, both Democrats and Republicans, have told us that. We know that because Trump's own administration has told us that. Joe Biden won the election fair and square, and quite frankly, it wasn't even close. But President Trump continues his journey through Never Never Land, held aloft by Tinkerbell TV.
I don't think we even have to prove this. They say that I was doing so much better than they thought that they panicked and they started just doing ballot after ballot very quickly and just checking the Biden name on top.
Now, that is a new one, alleging they, and who is they, by the way, he doesn't say, that a panic led them, whoever them is, to fill out ballots for Biden. Ballots that are verifiable, that were counted by hand in some places by Democrats and Republicans. His desperate conspiracy theory even fails the plausibility test there, and it certainly flunks the evidence test. He says he doesn't even have to prove this. Well, how it works is he does have to prove this, unless he's not actually trying to prove anything, unless he's just trying to muck things up, be a sore loser, assuage his bruised ego at the expense of the country and its citizens' faith in its government and its institutions.
This is total fraud, and how the FBI and Department of Justice, I don't know, maybe they're involved.
Even Maria Bartiromo seemed shocked by the President of the United States casually suggesting that the FBI and the DOJ rigged the election against him, departments helmed by his own appointees.
Missing in action. Can't tell you where they are. They just keep moving along, and they go on to the next president.
Yeah, they do, because that's how it works. They do move on to the next president, as baffling as that may be to Trump, who it appears is just really nursing this open wound of losing a popularity contest.
We won the election easily. There's no way Joe Biden got 80 million votes.
And yet the president's 74 million votes, totally real, totally legit, no reason to question those, he says.
And I was called by the biggest people saying, congratulations, political people. Congratulations, sir. You just won the election. It was 10 o'clock.
Congratulations, sir, these unnamed biggest people said to him. Well, remember that CNN fact-checker Daniel Dale, who spends his time pretty much only reviewing Trump's falsehoods, says sir is one of Trump's tells. He uses it often when he's lying. And it's not the first time that Trump has just conjured people out of thin air. Maybe you remember his friend Jim, who once loved Paris, went all the time with his wife and kids, Trump said, who stopped going because of foreign extremists. Well, CNN was unable to find Jim or verify his existence. No other news outlet was able to do it. Apparently, Trump has an imaginary friend, or friends plural, like John Barron, then Citizen Trump spokesperson who on tape bragging about Trump sounded exactly like Trump himself. So let's just say that John Barron does not have a LinkedIn page, but he does have a hand in shaping the White House's messaging, which at times gets a little stopped up.
This election was over, and then they did dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps.
Now, he appears to be describing what his legal team and their allies are doing across the country, with 30 cases now lost or withdrawn.
They weren't allowed to have poll watchers. The Democrats and thugs. Now, I'm not talking about saying, could you please move over? They threw him out of the counting rooms.
Now, that's a lie, something his own lawyers say they can't prove in court. Trump even went after the Republican governor of Georgia.
The governor's done nothing. He's done absolutely nothing. I'm ashamed that I endorsed him.
Done nothing because he hasn't abused his power, hasn't reversed the will of the voters, hasn't stolen an election for Trump?
Mr. President, but if you take out the contested swing states electoral votes, you're back down to President Trump having 232 electoral votes and Joe Biden having 227.
True, but that's also like saying if you take out the points that Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen scored, you're back down to John Stockton having the starring role in The Last Dance. That's not how it works, unless you're on Planet Trump.
I wanted to file one suit, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, against, and put everything into one simple suit. And they say, sir, you don't have standing. I say, I don't have standing. You mean as President of the United States, I don't have standing. What kind of a court system is this?
Assuming he's upset that he's not going before the Supreme Court, he doesn't quite understand that he's not entitled to automatic attendance to the nation's highest court just because he filled a third of it or because he's president. His lawyers apparently don't understand that either.
We're waiting for the United States Supreme Court, of which the president has nominated 3 justices to step in and do something, and hopefully Amy Coney Barrett will come through.
They're truly hoping that the president's appointments will further fuel his fantasies as he takes his fairy tale global.
And you have leaders of countries that call me and say that's the most messed up election we've ever seen.
Of course, he doesn't name these world leaders, nor was he challenged to by Bartiromo. But nearly all of those world leaders have actually congratulated Biden, except for Vladimir Putin.
This is disgusting, and we cannot allow America's election to be corrupted. We cannot.
Well, how about she stops embracing conspiracy theories on national television? That might help, but if she lets the president's phone call go straight to voicemail, she wouldn't get his validation.
You're actually very brave because you're doing something the media doesn't want to talk about it.
There were so many conspiracy theories and lies in this interview that his decision to boot Sidney Powell off his legal team for being too tinfoil hat is a rejection of Trump's own actions and that of his lead lawyer, who keeps saying the quiet part out loud.
The city of Detroit probably had more voters than it had citizens. I'm exaggerating a bit, but all you have to do is look at statistical data.
It is Tuesday, the 1st of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. Go ahead, use the Spanish kind. It's a bit more expensive, but I have to say, they are really both very, very good. So I wouldn't say the Spanish is better, only that it costs more because they make so much less. Anyway, some people swear by the Spanish paprika, hot smoked paprika, so feel free. Alrighty, well, we have another day ahead of us and a new month. Yeah, getting closer to that January 20th deadline. It's not really a deadline, because you know Trumpism will continue, and the crazy train, it's got a lot of momentum. You can't just stop a train in its tracks. Wow, these metaphors are holding steady, aren't they? Yeah, you can't just stop it. It's going to keep rolling for a little bit, and that little bit might be a long time, because time is relative now, isn't it? Okay, well, we're on the way to getting our country back. Boy, oh boy, I hope so. Except, already, Joe Biden is held to a different standard than what we just experienced for the last 4 years. I mean, I even got, well, pretty much threatened by Glenn Greenwald. I think he wants to sue me for libel. Yeah, Glenn Greenwald. I thought this guy was like a master of the universe. He's a big investigative journalist. Libel? Really? You want to sue me for libel? Okay, Glenn, you better be careful, because I think there's some people who might want to turn the tables on you in just the same way. And they have a lot more evidence to be able to make that lawsuit come to fruition. Anyway, he's out there slamming another woman of color. What is it about Glenn Greenwald and women of color? Women generally, but a woman of color just sends them through the roof. Yeah, apparently Neera Tanden is just too much for the Bernie Bros and Glenn Greenwald. Meaning Republicans can't stand her because she mean tweeted. Blah. Give me a break. For 4 years, the Democratic Party, its members, have been called socialists, communists, anarchists, enemies of the state, yada, 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 yeah. So Neera Tanden tweeted some mean tweets. Good for her. I hope she keeps it up. I know. She got rid of her, deleted her Twitter post, but that's because everyone does when they get elevated to a position of authority. All right, let's be clear. It's not as if that's any different than what goes on with everybody else. But Joe and his administration, or to-be administration, are already being held to a different standard. You got Cornyn whining about, Joe and his administration are transparent. Transparency, there's no negotiation on that. Where were you for the last 4 years? Where were you during the impeachment trial when Trump and his whole administration refused to testify in front of Congress? Just blew it off. Come on. Do you think we're that stupid? Do you think we're as stupid as the people that vote for Cornyn and Trump? There's more of us. But the way that they've gerrymandered, they pretty much neutered our mandate. And we need to wrest control of it back. Well, I don't know. Did we ever have control of it? I don't know. How do you wrest control of it back when you've never controlled it to begin with? Well, we're going to get close to it at least. Yeah. Okay. So lots of news out there in the world, and we'll pick up some of it today here in the curated part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A little bit of personal information. Back in the mid-'90s, I was involved in an auto accident. I was going up Hopkins in Berkeley, up to the Berkeley Hills to a job site in my relatively older van, the kind of van that, didn't have, the big bucket seats, only like the half seat, and only a lap belt, not an actual shoulder harness. That's how old that van was. But it was a great work van, Dodge van, by the way. And I got broadsided by a driver who had run a stop sign at speed, T-boned me, and pushed me up into the yard of this one house. And I was like maybe less than a foot from going into the living room. And this is like before 7 o'clock in the morning. So the process of that accident, now, of course, I was wearing my seatbelt, but it was only the lap belt. So my upper body, it was a warm day, by the way. My upper body got bent out of my open window, and the door part there pressured my ribs out of my sternum and thorax. And I suffer that to this day. Every now and then, I'll make a move or I'll pick something up and a rib will pop out. And it's pretty painful. And it takes a little bit of work to get it to go back in. And even when that happens, it's still tender. So I have been suffering from a rib out right underneath my shoulder blade on the left side. It had been out. It's a lot better this morning. The last couple of days, it was just murderous. You take some ibuprofen, some Tylenol. Helps a little bit, but any movement, coughing or sneezing, oh my God. Yeah, it'll make you want to pass out because it hurts so much. Anyone who's had rib problems knows what I'm talking about. But this is a long time ago, and I fear that because I'm getting old, I'm going to be feeling all these aches and pains in a much more profound way than even I could imagine. I knew it was coming. And I've been feeling the aches and pains of aging for a while now, darn it. Yeah, all those sports injuries have come back. Well, not the injuries themselves, but the pain from them, the debilitating aspect of that injury that is apparently lifelong. Who knew? I tell everyone, when they told me I was an immortal, no one said how much it would hurt. Yeah, boy, you might be an immortal, but you're not immune from pain. Ew, no one tells you that. Yeah, no one. Anyway, today is a much better one. I think I finally got it to relax a little bit and, knock on wood, but I'm not making any quick movements. I'm not going to be lifting things while twisted, and I certainly hope I don't sneeze in a twisted movement because that seems to be the trigger that makes that rib pop out, or a rib. It just happens to be this time the one underneath my shoulder blade. Right? I should count them, but it's down a little low, but right there at the bottom of the shoulder blade. No fun. I have what's known as a Tarrytown. It looks like a sheep hook. Have you ever seen a sheep hook? Yeah, in the Bible. But it has some other appendages on it, thus the Tarrytown. And it can be used in a fashion to be able to get to spots on your body that you wouldn't be able to normally get. So I can give myself a little bit of a massage. So I was using the Tarrytown to try to dig in underneath the shoulder blade and get that rib to pop in, which doesn't feel good in that process either. It's pretty tender. But last night, the night before, it was okay. And then, then I coughed or sneezed yesterday and set myself back. But I was able to at least get it close or back in, even though it was very, very tender when I went to bed last night. And this morning, knock on wood, I woke up and I didn't have the taking the breath away pain by just moving the slightest. So I can tell it's there, but it's more than livable. It's almost like not there, but I can tell it's there. And so I have to be careful. Boy, yeah, getting old. What a drag. Well, what's on the rest of the menu? Enough of this personal stuff. At the top, yeah, of course. Well, the right-wing media continues to enable Trump's 2020 election conspiracy theories completely without any evidence or plausibility. But they're going to keep doing it because there's a lot of people out there apparently who still believe this BS because they want to. They do. On the rest of the menu, here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, a U.S. District Court ruled that detained immigrants must see a judge within 10 days because, ICE and the rest of the Gestapo have not been doing that. Not. Despite the federal ban, renters are still being evicted amid the virus. So much for law and order now, huh? And in an obvious return to a Republican normal, the Georgia Secretary of State will investigate progressive groups for signing up voters ahead of the critical Senate runoff races. Back to normal. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Brazil's Bolsonaro suffered a wave of defeats in the just completed mayoral races. And the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons put renewed pressure on Russia, meaning Vlad, to explain the Navalny poisoning. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Off to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and our chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. If you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio and possibly send us the equivalent of an espresso-type coffee drink, you have no idea how we can stretch those dollars beyond compare, pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue resisting against this terrible, I don't know what to call it, but it's terrible. Whatever it is that the right wing are throwing out at us, even when we have an administration that we voted for in place, we still have to resist all this terribleness out there. And your generosity allows us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, so many years ago. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and so much more. Thank you. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime and then get that linked up on social media because that's what you do. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West Pickup Podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found because they're everywhere. Everywhere. All right. We'll dive into this first offering here. I got a little bit of arranging. Things are starting to fall over a little bit in my little studio. Okay, everything's back in place. We're going to dive in, as I said, into this first offering. It comes out of the Associated Press by Larry Neumeister. Newly detained immigrants must appear before a judge within 10 days rather than the weeks or months they've sometimes had to endure in recent years. You mean the Trump years? And a judge said that yesterday, Monday. Civil rights groups praised the ruling by U.S. District Judge Allison J. Nathan as the first of its kind in the nation to set such a rule for ICE. They said in a release that the ruling would strike a blow to federal immigration authorities who hold detained immigrants indefinitely before they appear before a judge. The judge said the law authorizing the detention of immigrants while removal proceedings are pending does not negate class members' interests of the utmost importance in freedom from imprisonment. Class members may not have a fundamental right to be released during removal proceedings, but nor does the government have an unfettered right to detain them, she said. In 2014, the average wait to see a judge was 11 days, but it had stretched to over a month in 2017. Oh, really? During the Obama administration, it took them 11 days. Then in the beginning of the Trump administration, it suddenly took a month. And by 2018, nearly 3 months to see a judge. And that was according to the judge's ruling. Messages for comment was sent to the Justice Department, which represented the agency in court, and ICE, which falls under the Department of Homeland Security. A few weeks or months of sitting in inhumane ICE detention facilities can be dangerous and devastating for individuals and their families, said Nijia Zhan, an attorney at the Bronx Defenders. The court's ruling recognizes that prompt access to an immigration judge is a fundamental right, one that is all the more important when detention facilities are hotbeds for the spread of COVID-19. Locking people up for months before they see a judge during immigration proceedings is unjust and unlawful, and it does immense harm to immigrant families, said Bobby Hodgson, a staff attorney for the New York Civil Liberties Union. Class member Shamer Michal said ICE officers told him he'd be home by dinner time when they picked him up as he prepared his children for school. He said he did not see a judge for 6 weeks, so I guess he didn't see his family at that time either. During that time, I was mentally shattered. I missed my son's second birthday, and I felt like I had no chance to fight my case. I told the ICE officers I would rather buy my own plane ticket home than stay in an ICE detention any longer, he said. I hope the judge's ruling ensures nobody will have to go through what I went through. You got to be careful. If you tell ICE you'd much rather go back to the country that your genetics say you're from, they might do it. So be careful. The civil rights group said in their release that many individuals held for months were entitled to release. They said about 40% of them were eventually released on bond. Others, they added, were U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents. What? The groups said the average petitioners have lived in the United States for 16 years, and nearly a third are lawful permanent residents. The judge granted a class action status to a lawsuit by civil rights groups filed 2 years ago in Manhattan federal court. She noted that the federal government had never filed arguments opposing the designation. Michael Casey of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A nationwide eviction ban was supposed to protect tenants like Tawanda Mormon, who was forced out of her 2-bedroom apartment last month in Cleveland. The 46-year-old, who was hospitalized in August for the coronavirus and cannot work due to mental health issues, said she fell behind on her $500 a month rent because she needed the money to pay for food. When she was evicted in October, Mormon said she was unaware of Trump's directive, implemented in September by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that broadly prevents evictions through the end of 2020. It was difficult. I had to leave all my stuff, said Mormon, who has been staying with friends and relatives since her eviction. I don't have no furniture, no nothing. With most state and local eviction bans expired, the nationwide directive was seen as the best hope to prevent more than 23 million renters from being evicted amid a stalemate in Congress over tens of billions of dollars in rental assistance. It was also billed as a way to fight the coronavirus, with studies showing evictions can spread the virus and lead to an increase in infections. The CDC order has averted a wave of evictions, housing advocates said, but tenants are increasingly falling through the cracks. Some judges in North Carolina and Missouri refuse to accept the directive, and the order has been applied inconsistently, and some tenants who had no legal representation knew nothing about it. Landlords in several states also unsuccessfully sued to scrap the order, arguing it was causing them financial hardship and infringing on their property rights. Right now, We're seeing variations in the way courts are applying the CDC order, and we're also seeing a lack of knowledge among tenants and property owners, said Emily Benfer, a law professor at Wake Forest University and the chair of the American Bar Association's COVID-19 Task Force Committee on Evictions. Advocates are working overtime to inform tenants of their rights under the CDC order, and in many places, evictions are going forward. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Election authorities in Georgia have opened investigations into progressive groups trying to sign up new voters in advance of the twin January elections that will determine control of the U.S. Senate. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said yesterday, Monday. Oh, really? Raffensperger, a Republican, said his office was examining efforts by America Votes, Vote Forward, and the New Georgia Project. He said some groups had been encouraging people who lived outside Georgia to register to vote in the state. These third-party groups have responsibility to not encourage illegal voting. If they do so, they will be held responsible. Raffensperger said, the Republicans are getting back to normal now. Representatives of the organizations did not immediately respond to questions about the announcement. The state is the site of a pair of January 5 runoffs for U.S. Senate seats that will determine which party controls the upper chamber of Congress for the next 2 years, and with it, the ability to advance or block Democratic President-elect Joe Biden's legislative agenda. Raffensperger said his office also had several investigations open into accusations of wrongdoing in the U.S. presidential election. What? You're going to investigate Trump? Let's see if he is. Outgoing Republican president, we hardly ever use that term here on Netroots Radio. It's banned. We're not supposed to use the P word. Our style manual says so. Anyway, that guy Donald Trump has repeatedly and without evidence claimed his loss to Biden in the November 3 election was the result of widespread fraud, though state and federal election officials have said there is no evidence of it. Now, of course, we all know that much of Trump's anger has been trained on fellow Republicans Raffensperger and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp after Biden narrowly won their state. Narrowly? Let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Julia Rosen. To us humans, climate change feels like something that's happening to the atmosphere, but most of the action is actually at sea. About 90% of the heat that gets trapped by greenhouse gases is absorbed by the ocean.
So it's really important to track that energy in the climate system and track the warming of the ocean.
Jörn Kelly's an oceanographer at Caltech. Of course, the ocean is really big, and taking its temperature is hard. Satellites give information about the surface, and scientists have launched drifting devices that measure conditions in the upper mile of water. But researchers still struggle to collect data from the deep ocean and to detect the long-term trends underlying day-to-day variations in temperature. Now, however, scientists have developed a new technique that allows them to measure temperature changes across entire ocean basins. The idea dates back to the 1970s, when researchers first proposed using sound waves to study ocean warming, because the speed of sound through water depends on the physical properties of that water, which are related to temperature.
And roughly, if we warm up the ocean temperature by 1 degree, the sound speed change, it would be 4 meters per second. And this is a very sensitive change.
Wenbo Wu, a seismologist also at Caltech, who led the study. That 1 degree he mentioned is a Celsius degree. Researchers originally proposed using artificial sound sources, but that notion got nixed because of concerns about the impacts on marine animals. In the new study, however, Wu, Callies, and their colleagues show that they can use the sounds produced by earthquakes instead. In an earthquake, some vibrations bounce off the seafloor and turn into sound waves that get picked up by seismometers and underwater microphones. The researchers looked at the travel times of these sound waves for 2,000 pairs of earthquakes that occurred in the East Indian Ocean between 2005 and 2016. Each earthquake pair happened in the same place but at different times, allowing the researchers to measure how much the sound waves sped up. The analysis revealed that the waves traveled a few tenths of a second faster in more recent quakes than older ones, a difference that translates to a warming trend of 0.04 degrees Celsius per decade. 4/100ths of a degree may not sound like a lot, but it represents a huge amount of heat, considering it's the change in a body of water almost 2,000 miles wide and several miles deep. The warming is also substantially higher than the rate reported in previous studies, although Kelly says not to put too much stock in those discrepancies.
We don't know whether that is the general finding, whether that only occurs here in this region at this time, or whether that is something we'll find in other regions as well. We just don't have the data yet.
The study is in the journal Science. Callies and Wu say this approach may even enable scientists to gauge historical temperature changes by studying data from much older earthquakes. In other words, you could say that the method is sound. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Julia Rosen.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Gaines. As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Dr. Joe Brazee is a researcher with CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. He's joining us today to discuss the importance of getting the flu vaccine. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, let's start with how long does the flu season last?
In general, flu seasons will last for several months in the United States at the national level. Each year it begins in the fall, usually peaks between January and March, and ends in the spring. But the timing of flu season is unpredictable, especially at the local level. So because we can't tell for sure when it will start, when it will peak, and when it will end in every community, we want to make sure that people get vaccinated as early as possible when the flu vaccines become available in the late summer and early fall.
Well, who should get vaccinated?
Everyone 6 months of age and older should get vaccinated against the flu each and every year. This is especially important for people at high risk of complications or severe flu if they get infected.
Which groups are at higher risk for complications from the flu?
Well, some people are at especially higher risk for severe flu or complications. These are people who are very young, like kids under 5 years of age, anybody 65 years and older, and people with underlying health disorders like heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, or diseases of the immune system, and pregnant women.
Joe, how effective is the vaccine for preventing flu?
Well, vaccine is the single best way to protect you and your family from the flu each year. Most years, the vaccine reduces a person's chance of getting the flu and complications from the flu by about 50 to 70%. but how well it works can vary from season to season and by person. So remember that vaccine is one of 3 ways you can protect yourself against the flu. The other ones are good hygiene, like hand washing, covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and finally medications. There are medications that your doctor can prescribe to treat the flu if you get it.
Are there any side effects from getting vaccinated?
Well, there are 2 types of flu vaccines. First, the shots. The most common side effects with the flu shots are soreness or redness in your arm for a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. The nasal spray vaccines can cause runny nose or congestion or low-grade fever in some people for, again, about a day or 2 after getting the vaccine. So these side effects are mild compared with the disease itself, which causes hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations and tens of thousands of deaths each year in the United States. Remember that the vaccine is the safest and most effective way to prevent flu each and every year.
Joe, where can listeners get more information about the flu vaccine?
We'll go to cdc.gov/flu.
Thanks, Joe. I've been talking today with CDC's Dr. Joe Brazee about the annual flu vaccine. Remember, everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Robert Gaines for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1966. That was the day that the registered nurses of the Youngstown General Duty Nurses Association walked out of their jobs. Nursing could be a grueling profession, with long hours of physical labor for low pay. In Youngstown, the nurses were frustrated because there were inconsistencies in pay. Some recently hired nurses made more than those who had been working for years. Part-time nurses did not receive the same wage increases as full-time employees. They also did not feel that they had enough say in delivering quality care for their patients. When they asked to meet with the hospital's executive director to discuss their concerns, the nurses were rebuffed. They then contacted the Ohio Nurses Association union and asked for help. Youngstown was a steel town, a union town, and the nurses were ready to join in the local labor movement. At first, the Youngstown Hospital Association refused to bargain with the union. But when the nurses threatened to walk out, negotiations began. After 2 months of talking at the bargaining table, major issues remained unsettled, including pay and union recognition. Fed up, the nurses called for a mass resignation. 305 of the 433 nurses turned in their resignations. 2/3 of them were part-time nurses. They formed informational picket lines outside the hospitals. A federal mediator was brought in to settle the dispute. In the end, the nurses won significant gains. They received a more than 25% raise over 2 years. A grievance procedure was established for the first time, but most importantly, the union gained recognition and the right to bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions for the nurses and their patients. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The number of people hospitalized with COVID-19 in the U.S. reached a record 96,039 on Monday, this according to the COVID Tracking Project. Several states are responding to spiking coronavirus cases with new restrictions. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom warned that the state could run out of hospital beds by the middle of December and hit 112% intensive care bed capacity by Christmas if current trends continue. Newsom said he might soon impose more dramatic and arguably drastic stay-at-home restrictions for some parts of the state. Los Angeles County issued a stay-at-home order for 10 million people. Rhode Island officials said with some healthcare systems already at capacity, they were prepared to start using field hospitals. In Hawaii, trans-Pacific travelers would have to quarantine for 14 days unless they tested negative. Yet some states, notably all with Republican governors, refuse to protect their people. Like Florida, where this program is based. Our governor, Ron DeSantis, has earned his nickname of Ron Death Sentence. Despite rising numbers across the state, 7,363 new cases and 58 deaths on Sunday alone, Governor Death Sentence on Monday spoke to the press for the first time since election week to reiterate his stance prohibiting any further coronavirus restrictions or a mask mandate, saying, quote, "No lockdowns, no fines, no school closures. Those are totally off the table." Regarding the idea of continued social distancing, which experts say will be recommended through next year, the genius said, quote, "No way. That is just totally overboard." Florida, indeed. As for when those vaccines will be available, Lieutenant General Paul Ostrowski of Operation Warp Speed claimed very soon.
What is your expectations come June for how many Americans will have had this vaccine?
100% of Americans that want the vaccine will have had the vaccine by that point in time. We will have over 300 million doses available to the American public well before then.
But before any of that happens, the vaccine needs to first be authorized. The FDA is meeting in the next week or so to decide on emergency authorization for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. One thing to keep in mind, Tuesday, December 1st, is also World AIDS Day, a reminder that the coronavirus isn't the only pandemic threatening lives across the planet. Oh, there's one less quack calling the coronavirus shots. Dr. Scott Atlas, a controversial pandemic advisor to Trump, who was criticized for supporting the idea of herd immunity to deal with the pandemic, has resigned. He was only serving a 130-day detail as a special government employee, and his term was set to expire this week. Atlas, a radiologist, had no infectious disease background and had not worked in public health. Trump found him on Fox Not News. Dr. Jonathan Reiner was a Bush White House medical advisor. Of Dr. Atlas, he said,
he told the president exactly what he wanted to hear. He told them that most of the folks in the United States were low risk. He advocated for herd immunity and promoted a really magical, bogus notion that you could achieve it with maybe only 25% of the population getting infected. He told the president that we never should have had a goal to prevent college students from becoming infected because they had no risk. He really completely ignored the fact that we live in multi-generational households. So he ignored the fact that the young who are relatively low risk would kill their grandparents, He completely downplayed testing and basically said that if we tested asymptomatic people, we would destroy the workforce. As you said, he questioned the efficacy of masks. He told the people of Michigan to rise up against restrictions and mask wearing. And just as a cherry on top, he gave an interview to Russian television. Other than that, it was a bravura performance in his 3 months in the White House.
Arizona and Wisconsin certified their election results on Monday, making President-elect Joe Biden the official winner in both states. The final two battleground states to certify the results in the face of Trump's attempts to steal the election. Biden beat Trump by 10,457 votes in Arizona. Wisconsin officials confirmed that Biden defeated Trump by more than 20,000 votes there. But that hasn't stopped the gaslighting. Fox Not News regular and Trump sometime campaign lawyer Joe DiGenevo went on Newsmax Monday and suggested that Chris Krebs, the former chief of U.S. cybersecurity who was featured on 60 Minutes on Sunday night, should be executed for defending the integrity of the November 3rd election.
Mail-in balloting is inherently corrupt, and this election proved it. This was all planned. And anybody who thinks that this election went well, like that idiot Krebs, who used to be the head of...
Oh, yeah, the guy that was on 60 Minutes last night.
That guy is a Class A moron. He should be drawn and quartered, taken out at dawn and shot.
And finally, Merriam-Webster Dictionary on Monday announced its 2020 Word of the Year. Pandemic. They say the word received a massive 115,806% spike in searches in March compared to a year earlier, saying, quote, sometimes a single word defines an era. And it's fitting that in this exceptional and exceptionally difficult year, a single word came immediately to the fore as we examined the data that determines what our word of the year will be. Runners-up included related terms like coronavirus, quarantine, and asymptomatic. But another runner-up was defund, which Merriam-Webster said saw a more than 6,000% increase in lookups in 2020 during calls to, quote, defund the police. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be a tad warmer than yesterday, maybe around 50 today. Some clouds this morning will give way to generally sunny skies in the afternoon. Winds will be light and variable. Clear skies overnight with the temperature plummeting to the low 30s. Winds will remain light and variable tonight into tomorrow, where we're expecting generally sunny conditions with a high in the low 50s. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked to 3,879 with an increase of deceased to 31. Pollen is rated at none right outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River proper. The region's air quality index is rated as good at 28 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.43 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles. And relative humidity locally is at 87%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 46 and partly cloudy. Paris is 47 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 54 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 31 with light snow. Kabul is 46 with its ever-present fall-winter smoke. Hong Kong is 62 and fair. Tokyo is 48 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 71 degrees and fair. You know they're in spring. Or is it dead of summer? No, I think it's dead of summer. That's right. And San Francisco, California is 46 with fog with a heavy fog advisory. And New York is 51 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Mauricio Savarese of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. President Jair Bolsonaro suffered big losses in Brazil's just completed municipal elections, with only 5 mayoral candidates he supported winning their races, and none of them in the most important cities. It was his worst rebuff came in his hometown of Rio de Janeiro, where Mayor Marcelo Crivella was battered in a runoff election on Sunday, losing to his center-right predecessor, Eduardo Paes, by 64% to 36%. Crivella is an evangelical pastor, repeatedly used the president in his campaign to try to turn his fortunes. Another big defeat for Bolsonaro came in Fortaleza, Brazil's fifth most populous city, where little-known center-left candidate Sardo Nogueira topped Wagner Gomez, the president's favorite, 51 to 48. Gomes had led opinion polls before the campaign began and often displayed Bolsonaro's support, but he sought to distance himself in the campaign's waning days.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Mike Corder of the AP brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Russia came under renewed pressure yesterday, Monday, to explain the nerve agent attack on opposition figure Alexei Navalny as the annual meeting of the global chemical weapons watchdog got underway amid measures aimed at reining in the spread of the coronavirus. Navalny fell ill on August 20th during a domestic flight in Russia and was flown to Germany for treatment 2 days later. His allies accused the Kremlin of poisoning its fiercest opponent. Tests carried out by labs in Germany, France, and Sweden, and by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, established that Navalny was exposed to a Soviet-era Novichok nerve agent. The organization's general director told Monday's meeting that according to the Chemical Weapons Convention, the poisoning of an individual through the use of a nerve agent is the use of a chemical weapon. A group of 56 nations issued a statement at the start of the annual meeting of the OPCW's member states, urging Moscow to disclose in swift and transparent manners the circumstances of this chemical weapons attack. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.